Phil Wheddon. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Probably a little bit better than you would be at this point, but we'll start that again, huh?
Wow, went straight for the heart.
I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, but yeah, the final was a little crazy.
Yeah, obviously, when you're involved in a final as a fan, I think the final had just about everything you could possibly want. From a goalkeeper coach's point of view, it had again everything you want. It had great saves, great goals. Just unfortunate to come out on the wrong end of it. But as you see, that I mean, in the World Cup, that's the way that games are being decided at the highest level. So again, when you take a step back and you look at the final, what a great advert for MLS and for soccer in general.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to kind of rewatch everything, or?
Yeah, obviously you rewatch it. There are opportunities within the game, I think, for both teams to take advantage of each other. There are things that perhaps could have been done to prevent that ball from being served in for that man. What's his name again? Gareth something. Yeah, I mean, it was a great ball that was served, but can we stop that ball? And then obviously the penalty kicks at the end. You feel bad for the guys. Daniel's been fantastic all year long. Never seen him slip, not even in training, and he puts the first one over. And then as you're seeing actually in the World Cup now, the left-footed kicker to the goalkeeper's left, the right-footed kicker to the goalkeeper's right. That's where most saves are being made.
Yeah, I think it's those games specifically. It's always so hard to. I mean, do you even send any coaching points to Andre after the game, or is it just one of those games that you just completely sweep under the rug and it's over?
The emotion is so high. Winning. If we were on the other side, winning the game, we're not going to talk about the balls that go in the back of the net for sure.
That's true.
And likewise, the emotion is so raw after the game. It's a one-off game.
Yeah.
What are you going to talk about?
Yeah, that's true.
So no, we never discussed any real coaching points from the game. Again, the emotion is so raw that it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I know you're a very thorough person, so I'm sure as a season, I mean, after a game like that, I'm sure after like a week or two, you kind of like reflect on some of the things that maybe you've progressed on as a coach. So what were some of the things that you walked away from the season going, man, I really improved on that?
Actually, I think being more creative in sessions. The one thing that I try not to do is repeat sessions. There might be a similar setup. There might have a similar exercise, but I try not to repeat sessions. And the opponents that we played against this year, the standard of soccer is getting better and better and better. So trying to replicate that in sessions, I feel like I did a better job this year than I did last year. For the first time, Andre played every league game, including playoffs. So that's 37 games for him, which he hasn't done in the MLS before. So I feel like, from my point of view, keeping everyone fresh and ready. Matt Freese played 15 games for our second team, and Joe played in an international friendly and for our second team as well. So all three goalkeepers really were ready to play, I would say, the majority of the season. So again, managing that with the performance staff and everything, I felt like I did a fairly good job of.
Yeah.
But also, to be honest with you, Omar, note taking and the way that we prepare sessions. I feel like this year I was much better at the minutiae, at the stuff that people just think that you show up with a bag of balls and an idea in mind and go for it. But we're quite meticulous in the way we plan things, and then logging sessions afterwards, so that at the end of the year, I can see that where our training focus was for each goalkeeper in particular, and how long they spent in distribution, how long they spent in shot stopping or dealing with service and stuff like that. So I was much more detailed in the off-the-field stuff this year, but still not good enough. I still need to be better at that, so that's the plan for this coming season.
You said something really important at the beginning there of you don't want to run the same session twice. And I feel like there have been times where I've over prepared and I've gotten out there and I feel like I had, a good session. And there's other days where, last minute we have an extra guy on the field and, the coach is like, hey, I need this goalkeeper. So now instead of having, a situation where you have 3 servers, you only have 2. And then you're kind of going out there and you're adjusting and adapting the way you need to, but then it can kind of be a dangerous game because you're just like, oh, wow, okay, within a last minute change, I could adjust and adapt and create a session on the fly. And then you're kind of like, well, maybe this is a thing that I can do every single day. And you kind of like have to fight that, I get urge to say, I'm going to just go out there and do this every single time.
Right. And the other side of that is what you might plan a great session and it's not going well for some reason. So one of the things I feel that coaches don't do enough of is prepare for failure. So if something isn't working, how are you going to change it? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to tweak it, to make it functional, to make it real, to make it more along the lines of what you wanted? I would say in my situation, quite honestly, the head coach, Jim Curtin, is fantastic at giving me whatever time I want to have. If he's going to start quite early with the goalkeepers involved in the team training, then I have the flexibility to take them early and get started as soon as possible. But for the most part, we have, except for the day before a game, I would say we have anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes a day. But adapting, like you said before, having one taken out or another one coming in or whatever it may be, you have to be adaptable as a goalkeeper coach. I feel like sometimes you plan a great session. And well, for me, anytime you think you've got a great session planned, something is going to happen. Something for sure is going to happen. But you might, if you plan a session before you actually meet with the goalkeepers in the morning as well, that can also be dangerous.
Before?
Yeah. So, for example, I might have an idea of what I want to do that day. I'm quite vigilant in being in the training room, being around the gym, getting a feel for what's going on in the goalkeeper's world that day.
Sure.
I have 2 goalkeepers who have a family. Maybe a kid's sick. Maybe they haven't slept. Maybe they're sore. Whatever it may be from a workload. So I feel like, again, that other level of adaptability. Okay, I've got to be aware of this in my session. How do I manage that?
That's interesting.
So it's just something else. But I do it every day. Every day, unless I'm pulled in a different direction, I make sure that I interact. It might only be 10 seconds, but I interact with all of the goalkeepers before I actually nail down the session.
You just get a feel of, if I try to make something a little too complex, this may be best served for a day where everyone's a little bit more fresh and a little bit mentally not so drained.
Yeah, and I'm not prying into their personal lives. Like you're not friends with the goalkeepers necessarily, so I'm not going to pry into their personal lives or anything like that. But organically in a conversation, I'll say how you're feeling, and then something will come out. So I feel like that's really important. That's an important part of goalkeeping that we often neglect. And it also depends on the stage of the week and the stage of the season. So are you coming back after a day off? Are you coming back after 2 days off? Have you only got 2 days in between games? Is it the beginning of the season, the end of the season? What do you have to manage? And there's all these different little things that come into goalkeeper management. And that's not even the number one. That's all of the goalkeepers in your goalkeeper group. You might have 4 people that you have to attend to in different ways.
Yeah, it's a skill I think you learn over time, right? I mean, I think you're saying it right. You've done, for example, like second teams before, so you kind of have an idea of those goalkeepers who may be a little bit upset. If, for example, this season we had Abraham, who was our starter at some points, and then Tomas would come down, and then it was just those days where you have Tomas is probably going to play on the weekend. So how do I speak to Abraham in a way that's going to convince him that just keep on training well, keep on training hard, but then you have those, hey, how are you? And then they say, hey man, I'm a little frustrated. I feel like, I thought I have secured the position by now, and the situation is this guy's coming back down. So what do I need? And then like you're saying, you kind of get a little bit of an idea of where their mind is at. So maybe that session, you need to tailor it to say, look, okay, this is a situation. Yeah, this guy's playing this weekend, but you need to tell me what are some things that you want to work on and we can gain in that time where you're not the starter, so we can get you back into that number one role. And I feel like you're saying it's so important to just say, hey, how are you? And I think once you've gauged where they are mentally, then you're saying you can kind of adjust from there.
But it's also part of being a human. I'm invested in these goalkeepers as human beings first and foremost. So and that helps to build the trust. And trust between goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches is a massive thing. The other side of what you said with your goalkeeper coming from the first team to the second. Now that should happen in every situation. That, if there's someone coming from the first team, they should walk in and play straight away. They're not coming down to sit on the bench. They're trying to get valuable minutes, and that's something that has to be understood. The other side of it is the goalkeeper who's coming down really wants to be either on the bench or playing for the first team. So managing the psychology of it that way, I'm being demoted. I'm not traveling with the first team. Whatever it may be, there's another side to it as well. So making sure that the goalkeeper that is going to play is mentally and physically ready. So it's it goes both ways, doesn't it? It's quite interesting.
And any examples of like how you've maybe messed that up, and at the same time like you've recovered and said, okay, I can deal with this better next time.
I've messed up so many things. I think, I'll be honest with you. We have our Union 2 goalkeeper coach, Carl Spratt, is very, very good, and I actually have him on the field just about every day with me. So he has a relationship with those goalkeepers. I would like to say that we haven't messed it up too much, especially this year, because we've tried to be consistent in the messaging and consistent in our approach. So, I'd have to think a little bit. I'm a little bit older now, so I'd have to think a little bit harder about times that I've messed that up. But there's obviously multiple times that I've done. I mean, whether it's poor communication or poor decision making. I mean, I go back all the way back to a game in Scotland. Tim Howard was on the bench. It was a friendly game. Casey Keller was playing in the goal. Tim Howard was on the bench, and in a 70-something minute, I think, Tim tapped me on the shoulder and said, any danger of me getting in? And I thought, I didn't even bring that up. So then you sort of whisper down the line, and the answer is no at that point. Yeah. So from that point onwards, I was always very aware of if it was a certain environment, could we get someone minutes? And I know that's not the first team, second team that we're talking about, but it was one time where I messed something up. And there's other examples where many examples actually where I wanted to make sure that second goalkeeper did something at halftime. So I took that upon myself to instill that in everything we did. And there's been a couple of occasions, and one high-profile one, where that backfired. Because then it creates a buzz about, is this person going to go in goal? Are they making a change? And that's attention that you don't need or want.
Something that I've noticed too is just like, it's work. And sometimes I don't know how to explain it, but like sometimes we prefer not to do the work of like, I've already done everything I needed to do with the number one. I got them ready. And then my mind is, that's it, I'm done. But then I think if you're saying sometimes you have those mess ups or those something to push you back to like reality, to be like, oh crap, maybe I needed to give that person a little bit more attention today.
Yeah. We had something this year where at home games, I would take the number 2 and number 3 out and train them on the pitch before home games. Then they would help us with the warm-up. And other teams do the same thing, have the 2 and the 3. And then it came to us that you're not allowed to have the number 3 on the bench. Number 3 out there assisting. So what I did, it would have been quite easy to bag that and say, okay, well then, all right, you're not training. But then that goalkeeper is missing another day. And that at some point, in my experience with the team I'm with at the moment, the Philadelphia Union, we have needed all 3 goalkeepers at some point in the season. So what we did instead was I would take the number 3 out and train. He had to be off the field 90 minutes before kickoff. So we would train earlier. Then I'd go in for half an hour, get something to drink or whatever, come back out with a number 2. And then he would train. So because I believe that, or in the way that we operate, it shouldn't, not I believe, but the way that we operate is I don't want the number 2 to, the first time he sees the ball is getting smashed by the finishing at the end. So we go out and we do a good warm-up, get him going. And then the number 1 comes out and he assists me with warming up the number 1. So it's really 3 sessions,
Wow.
which you could absolutely, like you said before, don't really need to do that. But
Yeah.
but again, it's investment in the players. It's like I said, I genuinely believe that each one of these goalkeepers can play in the team. And they feel that, and I've backed that up with choices over the course of time.
Yeah. You said earlier something about logging your sessions and all
Yeah.
that. I think I was talking to Ali Lipscher. She was on, and I spoke to her, and I said there are some things that, whether you know it or not, you say it on the field or you communicate to a goalkeeper, and then that's your like breakthrough moment of like, oh my God, I just said something that was really great right there. Let me log that and make sure that I say that again, and it becomes like a buzzword. And I think the same thing happens in how we process things, information with actual training sessions. So this year, after you've logged everything and you've seen everything, is there like a session or a specific topic that you felt that you incorporated this season that you said, okay, this is something that throughout the duration of a season keeps the guys fresh, but also sharp enough to adjust to like the tactical adjustments that we have as a team?
Well, again, a lot of our sessions are based around how our team plays, the types of opportunities that are going to come our way, and then it's also based on the opponent that we're going to play. So I sort of merged the two. I would say if we've got a 4-day build-up, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 of those days are solely focused on that. As well as, if there was an issue during the game, I don't come out and say, well, hold on a second, on Saturday we conceded a goal like this, so we must address this. That's not the way that I work. So, I'll throw those scenarios in just randomly within the course of training without announcing it. I think the way that we worked with in possession this year was actually creative at times and allowed our goalkeepers to play more balls with the feet in training than they had in previous years. So if you're asking, was there an exercise or training method, if you like, that we incorporated? I think we did a better job of not just isolating distribution, but involving it a lot more in the actual structure of the session. So it wasn't, okay, we're going to work on distribution here and then we're going to work on shot stopping here. It was in possession and out of possession, and you had the moments of transition and recovery to goal and those types of things. So again, that's your evolution as a goalkeeper coach. You look at things and you say, well, I know I've only got X amount of time. How do I maximize that time? So I feel like that's an area that we did well with.
So you weren't always a goalkeeper coach. There was a time where you were the head coach at Syracuse for 10 years. And I think one thing that we always have a gripe about with head coaches is like, how can you incorporate, like you're saying, more game realistic distribution, so we're not doing it in isolation. So when you were at Syracuse, you were there for 10 years?
Yeah.
So for 10 years, were you able to incorporate the goalkeepers like you wanted to, or like once the season started, you were kind of just like, okay, I want to incorporate you guys into this situation, but isolation, go train, I'll get the girls ready, and then we'll get going together?
So it's interesting you bring that up because I wasn't mentored or prepared to be a head coach. It was like, oh, do you want the job? Okay. Oh, cool. Oh, now I'm a head coach.
Yeah.
And I found that it was very, very difficult for me to step away from goalkeeper coaching. So I used to coach the goalkeepers. Again, I would hire assistant coaches that were very good on the field. And all of them have gone on to be head coaches themselves, which is fantastic.
It's great.
It's great for them. Even on game days, I warmed up the goalkeepers. So I tried to incorporate them in training as much as possible. So again, I would do that piece with the goalkeepers. The assistant coaches would do the stuff with the team, and then when it came for a global picture type idea, then I would do my best with that situation. Again, you learn so much about yourself when you're in different situations. I look back and say, wow, I really could have done a better job of, well, so many things, but incorporating the goalkeeper, different types of sessions now that I look back at and say, oh, you could have done that. In fact, I mean, Jim Curtin at Philadelphia has some great exercises in which, I mean, the goalkeepers are making tons of decisions. I wish I knew those exercises back then. or
Yeah.
I think from a head coach's point of view, just because the situation was a little bit different, we used the goalkeepers quite well.
And before that, you were, because I look at every guest that I have on, I like to see kind of like their trajectory as a coach, because as myself, I look at it and I go, oh, wow, okay, sometimes it looked like it was, looking back on it, everything kind of lined up, but I'm sure there was a little bit of uncertainty in between there. So so you started at Southern Connecticut?
Yeah, yeah.
So before that, did you go to college in the States, or like what was your goalkeeping background before that?
So I was, I would say, a mediocre goalkeeper in England.
Okay.
I came over here on a holiday, one of those working holidays, it was called North American Soccer Camps at the time, that turned into MLS camps, etc., etc. And I got offered different jobs to stay in the States. So you sort of have to make a decision: do I want to play? What am I going to do here? And I got offered an opportunity to go to Southern Connecticut State University, actually, and Ray Reid was the coach then, and they had this guy Bo Oshoni, who was the goalkeeper there, and again he was phenomenal, like so much better than me. It was ridiculous. So I think at that point, well, it became interesting. So I transferred and I went to East Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania, another Division II school, and again I knew nothing about American colleges or anything like that. And then I ended up playing for a group called the New York Fever, which was just before MLS started. And I jammed my fingers. So I jammed 3 fingers in a training session. And you know how it is. Everyone out there has jammed a finger, and but one finger wasn't straightening. It wouldn't go straight again. I was thinking, so I went to a hand specialist, and they said that I have this tendon disease in my hands, which was common in Northern European men, but required surgery. And I was really young to get it. Apparently, they said in 50s and everything else, but I had it in my early 20s. So that really curtailed any aspirations I had of playing beyond 24 years old, because I was having a surgery every 2 years.
It would have been recurring, and it would have been.
Well,
yeah.
that's what happened. I've had I think 8 or 9 hand surgeries now. So I mean, it just keeps coming back. There's no cure for it. So again, things could be far worse, and it's hasn't stopped me as far as the coaching goes. I may not be able to catch as much. So, well, I didn't catch anything anyway, obviously, and I can't give anyone the middle finger on this hand, because that finger doesn't straighten. But it's very, very interesting. So I started coaching at a very young age and was afforded some unbelievable opportunities. And for me, life is about opportunity. Like you said, you looked at things and you said there seemed to be a progression. There was no progression. I remember having tryouts as a coach. I'll come down to New York. I'll evaluate you in a session. This was the Metro Stars. I'll evaluate you. Here's the goalkeepers. You've got Tim Howard and Mike Arman. Do a session, and I'll talk to them afterwards. Those are. I mean, that's just the way it went. And
How old were you at that age? At that time?
30.
Wow. So you were my age, but I mean, back then Tim wasn't who he was, or he was up and coming.
He was up and coming. This was the year before he actually took over as the number one, and things started to roll for him. So it was a young Tim Howard and Mike Arman, who was traded from Kansas in exchange for Tony Meola. So it was that whole So it was an interesting dynamic as well. But that's how opportunity has kind of fallen for me. You get an opportunity, the door opens, and either you step through and go for it, or you say, I'm not sure, and an opportunity passes you by. So
a lot of people can get a little bit too caught up, and I want this to be the perfect move. And I had Enrique Duran, who's our head coach at the Lights, and he was at Barcelona growing up and was the coach there. And then they had a project in Saudi Arabia, and he was like, look, I love Barca, but I can't be here forever. And he talked about it. He said, man, I was so nervous about leaving Barca, because if you leave there, it's like you're leaving the best curriculum, the best players, and now you're kind of going off into doing something that's not so certain. And I think that's where the uncertainty creates a layer of adversity that you have to have in your coaching career. Because if you're not being challenged, or day in and day out everything's too easy and you don't ever have to create solutions, I think that is where you can stay stagnant. And once you stay stagnant, like you're saying, those opportunities may not come. And if they do, you could be there for a year, but you haven't grown enough. And the players do talk to the management, and they will say, sorry, this guy's not cutting it.
Yeah. I mean, from that, it's funny you mentioned that. Like so I was there, and we did well. We got to I mean, our season went very well. We did a good job, all that kind of thing. And then I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to coach in a WUSA for more money. And when you have a young family and everything else, it was like, I went in and said, I would love to stay. Is there any opportunity to get more money? The answer is no. So then I made a move based on, and sometimes it's not based on our career, is it? Sometimes it's not a career move. It's what you think is best.
Stability for the family.
Exactly. So that was, that was another, really a Syracuse move. There was a new head coach for the women's national team, and I didn't know if I had a job or not. So you go with stability. You go with something that you're offered. So again, sometimes it's not planned. But you do things for different reasons, and that's also why some very, very good coaches haven't moved into college or pro or something like that. It's for reasons that are more admirable.
I think I think as you get older, you start to recognize, hey, this coach has been there for 20 years, and they probably could have progressed somewhere else, but they've really built a legacy there. And like you said, the family becomes a little bit more of an important factor in the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
So what was that transition from the men's game to the women's game? I think from the goalkeeping side, at least.
It was interesting in that it was a new dynamic. So I had actually, prior to going with the Metro Stars, I had done one camp in Australia with the women's national team. So just randomly. And then I got asked back, and I had taken a job already with the Metro Stars. And it was at a time that obviously the women's national team was
coming off the World Cup.
In 1999, and everyone, the players are well documented and well known. So it was interesting for me because for the first time, someone was telling me, as a head coach, the head coach was telling me, it's got to be perfect. And I don't mean that negatively, meaning the goalkeeping actions must be perfect, because at the international level, you're basically dealing with knockout competitions.
Fine margins,
yeah. So these actions must be spot on, and it made me, I think, more detailed at the time. So it was a great evolution, and I got to work with some incredible people. And then obviously I flipped again and went to the men's national team, and then back to the women's national team. So I mean you couldn't write what happened.
How did you get the first chance at the national team? Was it before you go into the Metro Stars, but what was that? How did you get that?
Actually, I'd done the A license, so I got my A license, and Peter Meller, who is my mentor, and we're in touch now still. I was going to go and watch him train. This was just before the Sydney Olympics. I was going to go and watch him train the goalkeepers for the men's national team, that was the Olympic team, and it was Aidan Brown, Tim Howard, and I think Brad Friedel was going in. And I was supposed to go out to San Diego and watch him train. And he calls me, I think it was, I want to say it was Christmas Eve or something like that. And he said, yeah, you can't come. And I was like, oh, no. I was gutted because I thought that. He said, but would you want to go to Australia? And I'm like, so, and that's how it happened, because at the time, Tony DiCicco had stepped away. They needed a goalkeeper coach. I had obviously a connection to Tony, and I got the opportunity. And Peter at the time was working full-time for US Soccer and actually was placing coaches as well. So, I mean, all the stars aligned just for that one opportunity. And the co-head coach, Jay Hoffman, was one of those co-head coaches, and he became the head coach in Boston in the WUSA.
Wow.
So when he needed an assistant / goalkeeper coach, obviously I did okay in Australia, so he called me.
It is about who you know, man. It's
100%. It really is.
Yeah, but you're 30 and all these new experiences are coming to you. What are some advice you have for young coaches that are experiencing these things for the first time and maybe don't have the same footing as you in terms of like self-confidence? Knowing you now, I'm sure I could see that it's very, very easy to talk to you and you're willing to help out the younger coaches. But like back then, was there anyone helping you, or did you have...
No, not really. I would call Peter Meller and ask him for advice if I got stuck, because I was, you don't always get feedback, and this is something that has taken me a long time to understand. As a goalkeeper coach, your feedback is when the ball goes in the back of the net, and the head coach looks at you, and everyone's eyes go down the line, don't they? And you're like, oh, I want to shrink up right now, and everyone blames the goalkeeper. Yeah. That's your feedback. So I didn't know whether I was doing a good job or not doing a good job, if I was doing what the coach wanted. And luckily at the time, for me, when I was with the US women's team, April Heinrichs was the coach, and she would give me feedback. And that was fantastic for me. That really was. That helped me a great deal. Now, that was part of the coaching structure that was in place. There was a lot of feedback given, and I feel like the relationship with the goalkeepers was good as well. So I wouldn't ask them what they thought of a session. I still don't ask that, because they're the goalkeepers. We're the goalkeeper coaches. We should be able to take a look back and say, I could have done better in this and that. But for a lot of goalkeeper coaches out there, we don't get feedback. The feedback is based on performance. Of the goalkeepers you're training. So I think it's appropriate for a goalkeeper coach to say to the head coach, at the right time, obviously not in the middle of the season or something like that, to sit down with them. If you're unsure about team tactics and things like that, it's critical that you have an understanding. So asking the head coach, please, can you explain to me what you mean when this happens? And sometimes, and some head coaches see that as weakness. What do you mean you don't understand? And well, how can you have been here for 3 years and not know what I mean? Or but trying to get an understanding and appreciation for exactly what the head coach is looking for is important, because they're not always going to turn around and say good job or whatever else. So I went from one environment where you're getting a lot of feedback to another environment where there was zero feedback. So I actually went to one of the assistant coaches and said, how do I know if I'm doing a good job? The boss hasn't said a word to me. And he said, you're still here. and I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. Haven't been fired yet. Yeah. So again, in my current situation, we don't, there's no pats on the back and things like that. So I'm still employed. So I guess I'm doing a good job.
I've known you for a long time now, and I've seen your work in person at the conventions. I've seen your work online on IGCC, all the videos that you post there. And obviously you are a refined coach at this point, but tell me about a time in those early days when, you're kind of by yourself. The feedback is coming, but at the same time too, it's you and I can receive the same feedback on something, but you can absorb it and take it in one way, and I can take it in a completely different way. So what are some things that early on you needed to, I guess, work on emotionally to take those in stride and offer a different perspective?
You mean as far as someone giving me feedback?
There's moments where you have those sessions that are unbelievable, and right. You walk off the field saying, man, I feel like the best coach in the world. And there's days where nothing goes to plan, everything goes to shit. Lack of a better phrase, but everything goes to shit and you feel like the world's caving in. So I guess, again, we're almost on an island sometimes. And if Peter Meller's phone wasn't answered, he wasn't answering the calls. But what were some ways that you were able to combat those emotions and keep pushing forward without being too discouraged?
I think, again, at the same time or the same thing that I've done for many years now, I try not to be repetitive in sessions. So there have been times that I've been stubborn with sessions, and whenever you plan to do a crossing session or something like that, or where the ball's going to be in the air a lot, it's always windy. Yeah. So I can think back to days where I've been so stubborn that I wanted to do something with balls in the air, but the weather conditions haven't been conducive to that, and afterwards you've said to yourself, oh, that was a waste. I actually did that not too long ago. There was a time that I was in Portugal doing a session with the women's national team, and based upon who the opponent was, I was going to do balls in the air, and the wind was howling, and it affected absolutely everything, but I stuck to my guns and did the session. It was a crap session. In that experience, I was on a plane home. I didn't retain the job. Those experiences, again, talk about how life works. That's how life works. I think early on, I can remember being with a goalkeeper whose name was Billy Gatti. Billy Gatti was a goalkeeper who was Argentinian, and This is at Southern Connecticut State University, and I remember him knocking side volleys left, right, and center, and it was just unbelievable. Part of the way that he played was he was very, very good on the field. And for anyone who knows Billy Gatti or ever came across him, he could play on the field. Unfortunately, that didn't really mesh with the team style. So in the training sessions, I would do things that would allow him to be creative with his feet, and then we go to a game and it doesn't transfer because that's not the way that the team played. And it took a coming together between me and the head coach at the time it was one of those situations where the head coach gets up, walks down to me at the end of the bench, because I was at the end of the bench. I've moved up since then. That's what happens. You move up the bench. I was at the end of the bench, and the head coach said in no uncertain terms, "Please don't have him do that again." But the language was far more colourful, and it took it took the two of us to sit down and talk about how to manage the skill set of this goalkeeper in training. So, I've learned over the years to try my best to communicate with the people you work with, and you don't have to be best friends, which is fine, but you need to find that working relationship.
Yeah. Early days for you, Phil. What were some of the talent that you showed yourself that you felt, man, I'm really good at this? Was it striking a ball? Was it your ability to create sessions? Was it what was something that you can hang your head on?
Nothing.
Really?
Again, I feel incredibly fortunate to have had the path or to be on the path that I'm on. It's not the path that I've had; it's the path that I'm on, because every coaching opportunity is a stop in life, isn't it? And the goalkeepers that you work with, you're just one stop on their journey as a goalkeeper coach. I would say that being able to talk to people is important. Being vulnerable as a goalkeeper coach is important. We have emotions as well. It's okay to show it at times in the right way, and I feel that I try. I think as I've got older and more experienced, I am more honest than I was probably in the earlier years with goalkeepers, because you're trying not to offend people as far as playing time goes. I try and be as honest as possible, and that hurts players. Players don't like to hear the honesty sometimes, but you have to be honest, not brutal.
Yeah.
But you do have to be honest, because at the end of the day, they will thank you for that. But I would say, like a good wine, I've got better with age, and I would like to say that I'm the Philadelphia Union crossbar champion, and Joe Bendick and Matt Fries and Andre Blake, I'm sure they could vouch for that. So I've got better at that over the years.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a really long and challenging road. And I've learned something from everyone I've encountered, whether it's a goalkeeper on and off the field or a member of staff. You always pick up something.
That's so true. Yeah. Everywhere you go, you always try to absorb as much information as you can. And I think that for me this year I was more of an assistant coach as well. So you have the goalkeeper role, but also you're doing scouting reports and you're trying to figure out, for example, if it's like a 3-5-2, okay, if our goalkeeper is good with his feet, he's the fourth center back now. How do we create sessions that incorporate that and give them that same look? And I think that was for me absorbing new information and realizing, okay, this is something that I may not need at the next stop that I'm at, but something that I'm learning and something that I'm proud to have at least failed multiple times to figure out that I'm capable of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, when we're thrust into different roles, it can stretch us a little bit and it can make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But one of the things for me is, if you're uncomfortable, that gives you even more of a learning opportunity. So, and I think that for coaches out there, I try and make our goalkeepers uncomfortable on a daily basis. They never know what's going to come. So as a coach, sometimes in a new environment or having different responsibilities, or even you might have had this responsibility this year. What happens next year when you don't have that responsibility for whatever reason? Someone else has come in and, hey, we're going to have this person do it. And now you're uncomfortable again because you feel like, well, that was my role. What's happened? And now you've got to manage yourself as well as manage other things. And I think sometimes goalkeeper coaches, wish they could go back to the days of, I don't have any other responsibilities. I'm not in charge of set pieces, or I don't do this, or I don't do that. And then, but the danger with that is when they do that, now they become that coach of, I'm just going to show up with a bag of balls.
Become a little bit obsolete at a certain point.
Yeah.
I think what I do like though is that the head coaching opportunity for you, and you still were able to maintain a little bit of a lot of grasp on the goalkeeping side of things while at Syracuse. But what were the differences now? Is it just now you're not, the ratio is a little bit higher now? You got almost 25 people that you have to be more accountable for versus your 3 to 4 of the goalkeeping side. Was that something that was a challenge at first?
It was a major challenge. I think, I went in there thinking that I was. Again, I wasn't mentored. I didn't have anyone to show me the ropes. I didn't know. I didn't know the rules. And now the rules have changed even more. So, that's just me being honest. I wish I knew more, but I had that cachet at the time of, he's flying straight from Beijing to be here. And again, you think that it's going to be easy, but then you're managing scholarships and livelihoods and all sorts of other things. Again, that it really made me recognize that being on the field is a luxury. It's a luxury. So you spend as a coach, you spend 80% of your time on the bottom 20% of your roster, and you hope that you can get through the day sometimes to get onto the field and enjoy the game and coach and do those things. I learned, I saw and heard just about everything that's possible. I had to go through some really, really challenging experiences. And at the end of the day, there are things for sure in player management and things like that I wish I'd done differently, or had someone, again, like I said, to mentor me and say, this is the path you should probably take. And I'm proud of the fact that I made it through. There were a lot of bumps in the road, and I consider myself really, really fortunate to have been around some really good people. And there are a vast number of players that if I bump into them in the street somewhere or something like that, we're going to have a really good conversation, and we're going to share good memories and all that, even though it was, there weren't a lot of wins and more losses. So
I saw you guys were turning it around, and then in like the mid, I don't know, it was like 11, 12, like it was getting better, more and more wins, and then it just kind of.
Well, and then they said, you've heard of this thing called the ACC?
Yeah, switch it from there.
Yeah. We're going to go to that. Oh, really? Okay. So then you play North Carolina, Duke, and different playing field.
Yeah, I saw the final this UNC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any lessons that you have experienced at Syracuse that you still kind of carry to this day and reflect on?
That's a really good question. Again, being genuine, I think, with people. There were times there that I wasn't, because it was, again, as a head coach, and everyone can understand this, as a head coach, you deal with job security an awful lot. The more wins you have, the more job security you have. When your team isn't winning, you've got to try and find ways to win, and you got to, so at times you play one person over another, or you in the recruiting you do something different. And what I mean, not break the rules or anything like that, but you go and you do things, you go to different places to find a diamond in the rough, and sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. Again, looking back, I would say being genuine is the number one thing. And as a goalkeeper coach, and as a young goalkeeper coach, you've also got to be genuine, but understand that you're not the finished product. I think there's a fine line in everything we do between right and wrong, but understanding when you're talking about a game and you're talking about coaching a game, which is what we do, whether you're a head coach or a goalkeeper coach, it's not about right or wrong. Sometimes it's just about different, and being open-minded. Again, fortunately for me, I was surrounded with some very, very good people at Syracuse. Again, it didn't turn out to be in the wins column a lot of times, but I was surrounded by very good people, and I always swore that if I became a head coach, I would make sure that I treated people with dignity and respect, and I wouldn't treat people the way that I was treated at times as a goalkeeper coach or an assistant coach. And that, for me, to see all these people and still be in touch with these people, however many years later after our time together ended, that's important. That's valuable.
Yeah, I think not being genuine leaves like a little bit of a knot in your stomach, no matter where you go and whoever you're dealing with. Because I feel like there's so many times you have conversations with somebody and they can sense it. You can sense it that like there's going to be at the end of this conversation every nice thing I've said right now, but I'm sorry, this is what's gonna happen in this next game and stuff like that. So it is like a very slippery slope sometimes, because as soon as you veer off path, you can lose the player's trust, and they can kind of see that, hey, this guy is not as genuine or not as honest and forthcoming as we would have liked. But like you said, at the end of the day, the players just want to hear the truth, no matter if it sounds good, if it sounds bad. Just tell me the truth. And yeah, I have my own set of emotions that I need to reflect on what you told me, honest or whatever. I need to build off that as well. So I think that's also very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and again, whether if you're the head coach, obviously the program goes as you go. So when I look back, you said things were turning around at one point, and then they went south when we joined the ACC, which again, there hasn't been a progression in the ACC since, but for a number of different reasons. But when you look back at everything, and like I said to you, there are times that I wish I would have looked at someone and said, no. Should we take this player? No. Instead of not trying to, I think we can. I think being wishy-washy, just a yes or a no. Because players talk as well, don't they?
Yeah,
that's the thing that we all forget. We all forget. Again, as a goalkeeper coach, you're working with a goalkeeping community, and they all talk. They all talk. If you go and you give a presentation to a group of coaches, that everyone is nice to you in the room. As soon as you're out of the room, all of a sudden, oh, that was wrong, I disagree. But the other thing that I think I've found out about myself, and more so in the last 8 years or so, is as long as you have a why in what you do, as long as you have a why, no one can tell you it's right or wrong. So if you're running a session, Omar, and I say, why did you have that like that? Or why are you asking this goalkeeper to do this? If you can say, well, this is the reason I'm doing it, then it's not wrong. It's not wrong. We are so, I haven't looked online because obviously I traveled here today, but I haven't looked online, but I'm sure someone is picking apart the Moroccan goalkeeper for doing something. Yeah. Or Hugo Lloris for doing something. Everyone is so quick, assuming that it's so quick to point out the bad. And jump on something, but understanding why, those are the things. I asked someone last week. I was in Canada last week, and the coach had a goalkeeper started doing just the ground familiarization. So they're on one knee, and they were diving to their right side, but their left knee was up. And I was thinking, that's interesting. I wonder why.
Leg, yeah.
Yeah, the opposite leg.
Yeah.
And I had my theory as to why, so I asked the coach, and he said, "I'm doing it because." I'm like, fantastic. I would probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
So in everything that we do, like instead of chastising people, and I know we've gone in a different tangent here a little bit.
It's okay.
The right and wrong aspect of goalkeeper coaching, in particular, is something that I feel like I've definitely evolved in.
I would say that's one part, but I think the other side is I remember watching you at the convention in Chicago, I think maybe 2018, 2019. Okay. And after the session, you walked up to us and you were just like, hey guys, if you have any critiques or do you have any feedback for me, I'd love you guys just let me know what you guys thought. And that was the first time, going back to what you're talking about now, about I've kind of started getting more into social media around 2016, 2017, and you can see there's a lot of hateful comments out there, and at the same time that can kind of trigger something in you to say, you know what, no one's playing nice with me, I'm going to go off and have these bitter disputes with people for no reason. I'm just going to start commenting and all that, and it strikes something in you. But I think when I had that first experience with a top coach at the next level, already asking people who were for lack of better phrasing, kind of nobodies in the crowd. We're kind of just people watching you at the convention. You're asking us for feedback and critiques. And I don't know if I ever gave you any because I was kind of so nervous. I'm like, wow, this guy's actually like asking us. But I think that was something that switched my mind from like, no matter the situation that you're in, no matter how much hate there is and how much people can disrespect or disagree with what you see as valuable for goalkeepers, just ask for feedback, and that feedback is going to be very valuable to you. And I feel like when you opened yourself up to be vulnerable, I felt like, oh wow, okay, I'm gonna create that space for myself now, where I'm gonna allow myself, instead of just shielding it and just say, you know what, tell me what you guys think. The quicker you can tell me, I'll tell you if I agree or not. But if I do agree and I can say, damn, I could have done that better, I'm already improving, and that feedback is already getting me to the next levels.
100%. And you come off the field sometimes, or out of a presentation or whatever it may be, and someone says people say to me, how'd the session go? How'd it go? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, you need to ask them.
Yeah.
Because if I'm a big fan of critical feedback, because that's how we get better. And I think that if you don't ask for feedback, if you don't get feedback, and not the hateful stuff, but the constructive criticism, constructive feedback, if you don't get that, then you're never going to improve. You're going to think what you're doing is right when all these cowards turn around behind you, behind closed doors or on their phones or whatever, bash you for doing what you're doing, but can't come to you and say, why did you have the ball start there, and why did the goalkeeper do 10 forward rolls before she had to tip it over the bar?
Yeah.
And if you can't come with, hopefully no one's doing
that. It's a very extreme example.
Sorry, yeah. Don't do that. But I would rather have that interaction with people, because it also, for me, also checks for understanding from my session. So I'm asking you, what did I do? Or give me some feedback. What did you think about the angle of the goal on this, or the placement of the second goal, or the mannequin, or whatever? If you were watching my session, you might be able to give me feedback. You might, again, the average attention span for most people is 12 seconds. So they might have been texting someone else or putting something on social media at the time. Yeah. So it also checks for understanding.
That I 100% agree with. And I think if you can create more of a space to allow feedback, but on your terms, with you asking somebody to tell me what you think, versus everybody goes their separate ways, and you're kind of just in the back of your head going, man, I'm speculating. But
I will say this, Omar, I know you're going to go to something else. If you open that door, you've got to be willing to receive the feedback.
Yeah.
So if you post something on social media, you absolutely have to be willing to accept whatever's going to come in your direction. And the same thing, if you ask someone for feedback, it's not always going to be roses.
Yeah. I remember the first time, even just posting content, there was like the shortcuts of you post a session or you post like a video, and I sometimes said I don't have time to put a full description of what I was trying to do. And I was taking some shortcuts, and people were like, why would you do this? And like you said, why is a goalkeeper starting here? That's not realistic. Well, I was like, oh crap, if I would have just taken 2 minutes to just express what I actually was trying to do versus taking the shortcut, I think that would have given me a little bit more of a leeway to receive the feedback from more of a positive, someone who's delivering it from more of a positive place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, you have all these experience with the national team. You've won gold medals. You've gone to World Cups with the men and the women too, right? And so can you actually influence goalkeepers in the national team, or are you just trying to maintain and just prepare them for the next game?
When I was involved with the women's national team, I would say you could influence, because the women's leagues fluctuated. They were in, they were out until the NWSL. I think the NWSL is the most sustained league so far, and it looks like it's going to be in good standing, which is fantastic. It needs to be. So you spend large quantities of time. When I was involved, you spent large quantities of time with these goalkeepers. So yes, you can impact them, because a lot of times there wasn't a club team for them to go to. With the men, no, it was more about keeping them fresh and sharp, because they're coming from their own environment, whether it was overseas or in the US. It was more about facilitation and preparation than about training and trying to get something out of them.
I know you had those experiences with the women's side, but the men's side in 2006, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And you guys at the time, was there like I remember if I remember correctly, but was it Casey Keller who played all the games?
Yeah.
And then was it at some point conversations of like Brad Friedel or even Tim Howard like stepping in, or maybe Brad Friedel? I remember him 2002. That's what I remember, and save against Korea and how well he did there. And then I think when you shift to the 2006, was there discussions of like, okay, now it's Casey's time and then Tim's maybe coming up afterwards, or what was like, do you have a say as the goalkeeper coach at those times?
I didn't have a say.
Okay.
And that was, I was a young coach, thrown in to a really, really unique opportunity. And, Casey Keller was going to be the number one, Tim Howard was going to be the number two, and then it was really about who was going to be the best number three. Was it going to be a domestic guy, or was it going to be one of the other ones that was playing abroad? And it ended up being Marcus Hanneman, who at the time I believe was at Wheddon, another great guy. So I really didn't have a say. I would think nowadays, I would think that the goalkeeper coach has much more of a say, because they are traveling the world scouting them, that watching them, communicating with them a lot more than I did. The first time I met Casey Keller, the plane was waiting for him on the tarmac in Miami. We were going to play a game against Trinidad.
Wow.
I met him on the plane. Didn't even train with him.
Jeez.
So that's there's absolutely no influence there.
It's even tougher back then to keep track of those guys, because there wasn't like Y Scout now where you can kind of watch all the games.
No, it was very difficult.
Jeez. Okay, so you've been exposed to those top level players, and what do you think made like a Casey Keller unique, and then Tim Howard unique?
At the time, so I'll try and go chronologically if I can.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
At the time, Brianna Scurry was probably the best shot stopper in the world. So there was she was fantastic in the shot stopping realm. And then obviously Hope Solo came onto the picture, or more onto. I mean, she was always around. She was the alternate for the Olympics in Greece in 2004. And she had been more exposed to playing as a field player, so she was very good with her feet, and that separated her from a lot of other contenders, if you like, just the ability to play with the feet, as well as the athletic aspect and the mental resilience, I suppose. So she was very, very close to a complete package. So she had the athleticism. She was very, very good with the feet, and had the athletic tools, as I said. When you look at someone like a Casey Keller, I learned so much from Casey Keller. I used to watch in training and watch him in games, and he would be almost in this sprinter stance, sort of hunched over when the team was in possession and the ball was going down the other end of the field, and then on the initial transition of the ball, when the other team had the ball, he was still being this sort of hunched over sprinter stance. I was like, what on earth? Like, what's he doing? And this was sort of before we really started to talk about goalkeepers playing off the line. So he had quite an advanced starting position. And I mean, let's be honest, Casey Keller wasn't a track athlete, so not unbelievably fast, but positionally he put himself in great positions. Much like some of the older goalkeepers from years and years ago used to do, like Peter Shilton, for example, for England, his positioning, he was 5'11", 6 foot on a good day, if he had long studs in, and his positioning was exceptional, and Casey's understanding and reading of the game was very, very good, and Tim, as he continued to develop, had a bit of everything. I mean, I remember when we used to train with the Metro Stars, and you'd see him in the gym playing basketball, and I'm unbelievable the athleticism that he had, and he changed the way that the goalkeepers started to be recognized over here. I mean, he took a very wide stance, and that was almost taboo, wasn't it, back in the early years? Like, oh no, feet shoulder width apart and all this kind of thing. But then he sort of became, just his athletic ability allowed him to make saves that no one else could make. And as he refined his craft, obviously, all the stories are there of Man United and Everton, and obviously his heroics at the World Cup and things like that. Just a phenomenal guy. So those were really the main goalkeepers that I was around at that level. And now, Again, I'm fortunate to be working with an unbelievable group of goalkeepers for the last 4 years. And it's just been such an incredible ride. Even, and I'll include the goalkeepers that we had in the second team. And when I was with the second team, they all were great to work with. And, I see time and time again just little glimpses of things where you say, wow, how did they do that? You look at Andre Blake and people are saying, oh, he should be in Europe or wherever. So we talk about defining elements of goalkeepers, and so I talk about Casey's positioning and Scurry with a shot stopping and everything else. Andre Blake is as calm as you can possibly be, and humble at the same time. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He's very, very consistent in his approach to things. And for me, if I was a young goalkeeper and I was around him, you can't be the same goalkeeper, obviously. Sure. You can't. I mean, you'd find your own way to manage your emotions and things, but his ability to just let things roll and get on with his job and be consistent in everything that he does, that I feel sets him apart from a lot of other goalkeepers. I don't remember him having a bad day in training. I mean, yeah, there are balls that go in where he's frustrated or something like that, but he's always got a consistent approach, which and a calm demeanor, which is very, very challenging.
Yeah, consistency is, from coaches to goalkeepers, that's what I've been hearing, is just give me peace of mind as a coach. I don't even want to think about Andre as the goalkeeper. I want to just say I'm going to put him on the team sheet, and I know he's going to give me an 8 out of 10 every single week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeez. Okay, we're running a little bit low on time. I just want to ask you, you've had all these experiences. Did you have like one story from those each experience? The experience of like going to, Beijing was towards the end of the national team, right?
Yeah, that was 2008. So 2004 was Greece.
Okay.
Again, we went to Portland this year to play against the Timbers, and I remember in 2003 the way that things used to happen. The Women's World Cup was supposed to be in China, and it got moved to the US. I remember being up in the rafters in Portland for the first half with a computer and clipping the first half and taking down, so I'm lying on my belly on the rafters in Portland, so, and that's how we used to do it. Like you'd clip the game, or I would clip a few clips to take downstairs in the first half, and I'd be on the bench in the second half. So when we went to Portland, I was like, oh, that's where I was. I was right there. So and then with the men's team, I would say, so I'm going down. I was actually driving to Baltimore. So I think their national convention was in Baltimore in 2005, Baltimore or Philly, one of the two. And it's pouring with rain, and I'm just getting on the highway, driving down, and the phone rings. It's a number I don't recognize, and the voice says, "Hi, can I speak to Phil, please?" I said, "This is Phil," and the voice on the other end says, "Phil, this is Bruce Arena." To which I used some colorful language and told one of my friends to go somewhere else. To which he says, "No, Phil, this is Bruce Arena." And then I got invited into a camp and luckily I stayed there for the duration. And I remember, and Bruce never gave you a ton of feedback, but I remember we were in Colorado Springs preparing to go to play at the Azteca. So we're high altitude training in February, and it's freezing cold. And John Bush was one of the goalkeepers that had come into camp. And John wanted to do a little bit after this game that we played against the Rapids. And I took a touch. It was the most fundamental goalkeeping exercise. It was play a low ball down to his left. So I had to make a save, get up, and then John wanted to push and dive and get some extension in and things like that. So I put one ball down to his left. I struck the second ball up to his right in the top corner. And John's frustrated. The ball's gone. I get a tap on the shoulder. He said, "You didn't mean to do that." This is Bruce. I said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "Do it again." So luckily for me, I did that same ball into low to the left and then high into the top corner. He just walks away, which was I suppose a seal of approval. Or, so those were things that happened there. I didn't know that coaches didn't get gold medals in the Olympics, so I was gutted when we got to the final in 2004. Found out that coaches don't get medals, so here I was thinking I was going to get a medal. So at the time, my daughter made me one, which was nice.
That's cute.
There's so many things that occur over the course of time that, and I'm sure if we had another 5 hours, I could come up with a lot more stories.
Yeah.
But it's, again, I'm just very, very lucky to have had some unique experiences, and I think because Peter Mellor was always there for me, especially in the early years, I feel like now that I've had these experiences, I feel kind of responsible that just to share some information. And again, not right or wrong, and I'm not trying to be someone above anyone else whatsoever, but I think too many coaches are worried about what people think of them. I am a people pleaser. I want people to like me, but if you don't like me, then tell me why, and if we can't get along, we can't get along. But I want to share information, and it's not right or wrong. It's just to provoke thought and ask, have you considered this? And hopefully I can do this for a lot longer. I mean, I know you've called me old, I think 5 times already. So hopefully I can
experience wisdom.
Yeah, hopefully I can do this for a long time to come. Because I still have the same passion as I had when I was a young coach starting out. And I think having passion for the position and for coaching and helping and positively impacting the lives of young people, because that's what we do at the end of the day. We positively impact the lives of people. And that's a massive, massive responsibility. And I just want to be the best I can be at that.
Well, you've done a very good job. I think a lot of the younger goalkeeper coaches, if we were to point at somebody who is continuously trying to rewrite what the dimensions are for goalkeeping in terms of like what's accessible for us in the IGCC, and I mean even the conventions, and you being willing to come on podcast, I think a lot of people who don't have the proximity to you can hear and see all these different videos and the media clips that are going around out there, and hopefully, as he says, make the pilgrimage to the IGCC, International Goalkeeper Coaches Conference. It's in Delaware this year?
Yep, in Wilmington, June 23rd to 25th.
Okay.
And the cost is $9.95. That doesn't include hotel, but there's all sorts of coupon codes, discount codes that you can get. And again, as always, I'm going to try not to disappoint with the type of coaches that we bring in.
How do you? I was going to say, how do you choose them? But I think they're all top. So it's
they're all good. They're all good.
All right, Phil. Hopefully next season you guys can win the MLS Cup. That'd be a good recap for the next season. But thank you again, and then all the best tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.